Tonight, shaking up the status quo.
They must be allowed home. They must be allowed to rebuild.
The response to President Trump's proposal for Palestinians in Gaza.
We're going to take over that piece and we're going to develop it.
Plus, buyout deadline, the attempt to drive down the federal workforce, sparking protests from lawmakers and federal employees.
We don't pledge allegiance to Elon Musk. We pledge allegiance to the United States of America.
And City on a Hill.
Against you and you alone have we sinned.
The faithful flock to the nation's capital to promote religious freedom at a national gathering for prayer and repentance. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. From Gaza to Washington, D.C., President Trump is redefining America's role on the world stage. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. President Trump is making big moves at home and abroad. First, starting with plans for America to own the Gaza Strip and rebuild it into what he calls the Riviera of the Middle East. Jordan and Egypt are outright rejecting the proposal amid growing questions over what it means for Gazans and Israel's ceasefire with Hamas. Meanwhile, at home, Trump is charging ahead with his domestic agenda. He's taking action to ban transgender athletes from participating in women's sports, delivering on a major campaign promise. Plus, another win for Trump. His pick for Attorney General Pam Bondi has been officially sworn in. Bondi was formerly the Attorney General of Florida and Trump's personal lawyer and is expected to overhaul the Justice Department. And on the immigration front, some pushback for Trump. Today, a federal judge blocked his executive order seeking to end birthright citizenship. And CBN's Kelly Wright is at the White House with the latest. Kelly, talk to us about Gaza. Let's start there. What is President Trump proposing for Palestinians living in Gaza?
Well, his proposal is shocking the world and creating, if you will, earthquake shocks throughout the diplomacy circles, particularly in the Middle East and the Arab world as it relates to what the president wants to do with Gaza. And that, of course, is that he wants to rebuild it. He wants the United States to be able to take over to actually construct a French Riviera, is what he said. He didn't want to be cute with the wording, but he did say that it's a place that can be built up and rebuilt, and it's a place that right now, in its current form, is just too dangerous for the Palestinians, for anyone on earth to be living there because of the rubble that's there and because of ordnance that has not been detonated or exploded, and just the sheer deterioration and devastation of the area. Here's what he had to say during last night's historic meeting with he, as well as Israel Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu.
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble and demolished buildings falling all over.
And so that's what he wants to address. He wants to stop that type of carnage that we've seen in the 15-month war between Israel and Hamas, all of that emanating and starting because of what Hamas did on October 7th and going into the kibbutzim and cities near Gaza and really destroying life and rape and pillaging people and killing them, and Israel resulting in a way of attacking to bring Hamas under control, to eradicate Hamas. The president really trying to do something to bring peace in this situation, but he's receiving a lot of criticism, yet he's still dealing with the president and the leadership of Egypt, as well as Jordan, to find a place for the Palestinians to stay temporarily as they rebuild Gaza.
Yeah. You know, Kelly, it's hard to keep up with this administration. They're moving so quickly. Here at home, he's taking action to address trans athletes in women's sports. Talk about that.
Yeah, he signed an executive order that is dealing with no men in sports, and it deals with trans athletes competing against women in sports. He thinks this is a common sense approach to get women into sport fields of their own and not have men come in to trample upon what they've been trying to accomplish with their own competition. And he wants to do away with that. That order going to effect, by the way, people who were there included Riley Gaines, who has been an athlete standing in strong support with women athletes and making sure that the sport remains purely for women and not for any transgender trans athlete coming in to compete against women.
On the immigration front, Kelly, what challenges is President Trump running into, specifically on the birthright citizenship piece?
So the birthright citizenship piece has been blocked by a federal judge. It's a temporary blockage. And what this judge pointed out is that he believes that what happened with this birthright citizenship, the executive order, he believes is unlawful and it's unconstitutional, citing the 14th Amendment. But the Trump administration believes that the 14th Amendment should actually be examined once again because he believes that children being born into this country, if they're born to someone who has entered this country illegally, it does not automatically constitute that they become a birthright citizen. So that's where it stands on the legal challenge. The Trump administration pushing back and fighting that blockage right now.
Okay, Kelly Wright at the White House. Kelly, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
In other news, protests outside the U.S. Capitol today over Trump dismantling the Agency for International Development, or USAID. For 6 decades, the agency has provided foreign assistance to people across the globe. Now, most staff will be placed on leave by this Friday and ordered back to the United States. It's part of Elon Musk's efforts to cut spending and reshape Washington as head of the Department of Government Efficiency.
If you talk to American military leaders, they will tell you that AID is an essential and cost-effective part of our overall foreign policy and national security strategy because AID makes us safer here as we save lives around the world.
And critics say USAID is wasteful and promotes liberal agendas. Trump is proposing cuts to other government institutions, too, including the Department of Education. And now the CIA is offering buyouts to its entire staff, essentially giving employees the option to quit and receive roughly 8 months of pay and benefits. Trump's goal in all of this is to shrink the federal government. Well, with ICE raids happening daily across the United States, border policy is changing rapidly under the Trump administration. Chuck Holton reports from the border in Tijuana, where these changes are playing out.
The CBP One app, a program that allowed nearly 1 million migrants to schedule entry into the United States, abruptly shut down on President Trump's first day back in office. This move, part of a wave of new policies, has left many migrants stranded in border towns like Tijuana.
On the inauguration day, around 12 o'clock East Coast time and 9 o'clock West Coast time, our time, we were at the port of entry of El Chaparral, and we saw around 300 migrants, 300 to 400 migrants, that they had their CBP One appointment, this application. And immediately when Donald Trump was inaugurated, just 1 minute after, the CBP One app have been canceled. All the appointments have been canceled. And, the migrants, the reaction was, yes, for them was devastating.
For migrants who fled Venezuela and crossed through the dangerous Darien Gap to get here, the app's suspension has been devastating. Many already had been waiting in Mexico for months.
We applied on November 28th and our application was approved on January 5th. However, after President Trump's announcement, everything changed. We are still waiting here.
Here on the Tijuana side of the border, this CBP One app poster told people that they needed to download this app in order to get an appointment for an asylum hearing. But I'm going to try this QR code and see what happens. And if I scan this, the app is gone. And that means that more than 1 million people who had the appointment scheduled through this app no longer have an appointment, and that's why it's empty here at the southern side of the border. The Trump administration is kicking deportations into high gear, with hundreds of migrants being sent back daily. Most spent thousands of dollars to enter the U.S. illegally, only to be captured and returned. Their cost is both financial and emotional.
Most of them did come and were able to get flights and bus transportation, and a lot of them stayed. Mothers with small children, and I mean, it's sad because you can only do so much, you can't help everyone.
Given the crackdown, prices for illegal crossings have reportedly tripled, along with an increase in violence. Every few hours here at the border crossing at San Ysidro on the Tijuana side, we're seeing migrants coming across after being deported from the United States. The lady in the black jacket that's got her back to us on that table right there behind me was in the States for 6 years and was deported right away. Some of the people that she's with were just crossing. They paid $15,000 to the cartels in order to get into the United States through the mountain passes that are east of Tijuana. But they say that the Border Patrol was using drones and ATVs and captured them almost immediately. Cartels who profit from smuggling migrants are also feeling the impact. Journalists report increased gunfights in areas like Tapachula as these drug kingpins attempt to shift their operations.
Their pockets are being hurt, and it is being shown that they're actually are now agitating in the part of south border of Tapachula. There has been a lot of gunfights between the federal government and also, the parts of Guatemala and the crossings.
Just a few steps from the Pacific Ocean here on the Mexican side of the U.S.-Mexican border wall, you can see the old fence right there behind me, and the new fence that's going in is twice as tall. And they're doing construction as we speak. This construction has started up since Donald Trump took office. They are wasting no time at all in securing this border. Illegal immigration became a pivotal issue in helping Trump win another term, and making good on the promise to close the border is already proving to be a deterrent.
We are exploring our options, but it's complicated. If we can't find a place to stay, returning might be the only option. However, traveling back is nearly impossible for us migrants due to restrictions.
The Trump administration says it's just getting started, removing illegals already in the U.S. And a now empty border crossing is proof that message is working. From Tijuana, I'm Chuck Holton for CBN News.
Next, big questions about the future of education. Congress tackles the state of American schools as the Trump administration considers major changes. When Faith Nation returns. Welcome back. Since the 2020 pandemic closed schools, new reports show students continue to fall behind. Today, that national report card prompted House lawmakers to look closer at the country's state of education. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Michelle London has more. Michelle?
Well, Jenna, statistics show many students can't graduate from high school or college. One study specifically points to a partisan divide in education laws and policies. And that also played into today's hearings as House members seem divided on the cause for these disparities in the classroom.
The irony is not lost on me that we're here to discuss the state of American education while current administration is actively discussing how to dismantle the main federal agency.
Virginia Representative Congressman Bobby Scott charges Republicans are stuck on proposals that will only create more problems in the classroom.
Discrimination, erasure, and inequity. This all serves to distract Americans so that they will not notice that the privatization of American education systems with taxpayer funds going to private schools, the resegregation of public schools, the erosion of services for students with disabilities.
Scott and other Democrats blame current statistics on decades of federal underfunding in schools. Michigan Representative Tim Walberg and other Republicans counter that billions spent during the Biden administration toward DEI programs is a key factor.
Unfortunately, these efforts have been fueled by the federal government itself. In 2024, researchers with Parents Defending Education found that Biden-Harris administration spent over $1 billion in DEI grants.
One positive takeaway, according to Walberg, is that more than 1 million students are benefiting from private school choice programs. They include school closures during the pandemic, teacher shortages that led to larger class sizes, and socioeconomic background, where poorer school districts tend to have falling reading levels, staff shortages, and a lack of quality teaching. In her testimony, Nicole Neely, president of Parents Defending Education, says the trust between family and school districts is fractured.
Rather than partnering with parents, schools work against them. Families are being shut out of their children's lives. PDE has identified over 1,100 districts around the country, impacting more than 12 million children and counting, with parental exclusion policies.
Policies Neely says excludes parents from knowing their child's gender at school.
While we have great challenges ahead of us, We also have great opportunities in front of us, and I look forward to working with all of our members to meet these challenges.
And a few bright spots prevented this from being all bad news. An improvement in fourth grade math, where the average score increased, although it is still a bit lower than before the pandemic. And here in the nation's capital, district schools also made significant strides in math, the average increasing by 10 points. Jenna.
All right, Michelle, thank you. And up next, prayer and politics take center stage tomorrow in Washington. President Trump preparing to speak at the National Prayer Breakfast. We have a preview next.
Part of our Protecting Religious Freedom initiatives means recognizing in our foreign policy the difference between regimes that respect religious freedom and those that do not. The United States must be able to make that distinction. We must be able to look at the catastrophes, like the plight of Iraq's Christians over the past 3 decades, and possess the moral clarity to act when something has gone wrong.
That is Vice President J.D. Vance speaking this morning to the International Religious Freedom Summit in Washington, D.C. The summit is an annual gathering in D.C. that represents more than 30 distinct faith traditions and believes religious freedom is at the core of civil society. Across town, Christian and government leaders gathered at the Museum of the Bible today to pray for the nation and ask for God for forgiveness. The national gathering for prayer and repentance reflected on the 2024 election, but its main focus was on spiritual revival.
The purpose of prayer is to align ourselves with the will of God. We don't believe that governmental leaders can pray together and then go back on the floor and vote in opposite ways on issues the scriptures are clear about. If they pray together, they come in alignment with the will of God.
And the gathering featured speakers from across the globe, all of them asking God to intervene in their nations. And in another display of faith in politics, President Trump will headline the National Prayer Breakfast tomorrow. The annual tradition led by Congress brings together leaders from across the political spectrum to pray for the nation. Since its beginning in 1953, the gathering has emphasized unity, faith, and reconciliation. CBN News will provide live coverage of the event tomorrow on our YouTube channel. For more on that, you can visit cbnnews.com. All right, with that, let's bring in Tony Perkins, president of the Family Research Council. Tony, welcome. So you co-founded the National Gathering for Prayer and Repentance that happened this morning at the Museum of the Bible. Tell us about the event and how it went.
Well, this is our 3rd annual year to do this, and it was a desire just to come together to pray. It's not a prayer breakfast, as Dr. Garlow says. There's no breakfast. It's just all prayer, and that's what we did. We prayed, and then when we talk about prayer and repentance, repentance is something that, you know, it talked about a lot, but it is taking ownership and recognition of where we've fallen short of what God has called us to be as individuals and collectively as a nation. And so that was a major focus today, not only for the United States, but we had dozens of foreign countries represented and praying at the event this morning.
Yeah, it's neat to see so many high-profile people coming together and praying and asking for repentance. President Trump, Tony, will speak at the National Prayer Breakfast tomorrow. What are you hoping to hear from him? Is there anything that you're going to be listening for specifically?
Well, we've seen actions, which is actually more encouraging than speeches, and we heard you showed a clip just a few moments ago of the Vice President. I'm very encouraged that religious freedom is taking center stage once again under this administration. In the previous Trump administration, in their foreign policy, religious freedom, international religious freedom was a top priority because it brings stability. It brings economic prosperity, and so it's proper to focus on religious freedom. And we're seeing in the executive orders not dealing directly with religious freedom, but it's dealing with a lot of issues that apply to people being able to live out their faith in such a way that it impacts the world around them. So I'm expecting the president to continue to say, number one, we need God. I think he's going to thank God for sparing his life once again, and that we're going to be welcoming the display of faith, the Christian faith in our country again under his administration, which I think is encouraging. It's music to our ears.
Yeah, on the religious freedom front, Tony, we're seeing a lot of action from this administration. What more would you like to see them do as it relates to that issue?
Well, yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question because one thing that we are looking for is this administration is kind of having to undo what the previous administration, the Biden administration, did and just get us back really to where we were in 2020 when the Trump administration left. So one big piece that I think is going to be coming soon was the executive order dealing with religious freedom throughout the federal government in the workplace and elsewhere. So that's one measure that I think should be coming soon. And again, in the foreign policy, and I think that's going to happen under Secretary Rubio, that we will focus on making this a major priority in our foreign policy, which is extremely important.
Tony, while I have you here, I do want to ask you about your meeting with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu I know it was to offer some encouragement to him ahead of his visit at the White House. What was your message to him, Tony? How did that go?
Well, we were there. There's about a dozen of us that met with him. I met with him last time he was in town before he spoke before a joint session of Congress. And number one, I think he's communicating to us that he understands and appreciates the relationship with evangelicals. That relationship between Bible-believing evangelicals and Israel has never been stronger. And I think he was encouraged after our time with him and just discussing the issues and expressing our support. But I think he was very encouraged after he had his time with President Trump yesterday.
All right, Tony Perkins with the Family Research Council. Tony, always good to see you. Thank you. And still ahead, an ode to a great musician. That's next on Faith Nation. Finally tonight, a weekly concert honoring the legacy of a renowned and historical composer and musician. About 6 people sat in the pews at Trinity Episcopal Cathedral in Little Rock, Arkansas, to hear the music of Johann Sebastian Bach played on the organ. It's part of a concert series put on by the church's music director. Colin McKnight plans to perform for 30 minutes every Wednesday in the coming weeks. I think it was something like for 36 weeks.
My hope for the audience is that it'll be a little highlight in their week and a moment to relax and unwind and think about things other than work and to-do list.
And McKnight says the concert series commemorates the 275th anniversary of Bach's death. That's going to do it for Faith Nation this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.